Are you tired of high-pressure tactics?
No, I'm not going to sign that. It's too much.
At Community Auto Group, you'll find we have a straightforward approach.
If other dealers have made you uncomfortable, give Community a try. You'll enjoy your experience here and find a straightforward deal that's right for you, not high-pressure tactics.
Community Auto Group, straightforward deals from the straightforward dealer.
So with that, let's turn on the machine and are we ready?
I believe so.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and could we have a roll call starting with Commissioner Palmer?
Steve Palmer, present.
Kathy Gaines, present. Joy Van Zonen, present.
Brian McNamara, present.
Dean Gint, present.
Matt Dodge, present.
Jackie Usman, present.
Sandra Cervantes, present.
Colleen Devine, present.
Okay, very good. Before we adopt the agenda, there's a couple things we need to talk about, and one is that we had a request by 5 commissioners for a couple additions to the agenda, and we took that under advisement and added those to today's agenda per that request. But I think in the spirit of openness and transparency, we should probably have the 5 commissioners self-identify so that we have that on record that we do have a legal and ethical request by the meeting of the 5 commissioners that like to do that.
I'm one. And also Karen Reese was not able to come to the meeting today.
Okay, so Commissioner McNamara was one of the 5 requesting the agenda changes, and Karen Reese. Any others?
I was. Matt Dodge.
Commissioner Dodge.
I was.
Commissioner Palmer. That's 4.
Joy Van Zonen.
And Commissioner Van Zonen is the 5th. Okay, so for the record, we have that taken care of. And then
We have one other question on, before we go any further. I'm concerned that we haven't seen our chair, our elected chair, for several months. And does anybody have a status report on Cameron or his wife?
I do. Cam has been, I've been updating him by telephone call as to how things have been progressing. And as of yesterday, he said that things are getting settled down for him. He wasn't sure whether he could be at today's meeting or not, but he asked me to please chair in his behalf today as acting chair, and then he's planning at this point to be back at his full duties for next meeting. So that's the report I have from Chair Sargent.
Would you identify the other folks who are here in the audience, please? We have guests here today. So.
Right. So for the record, could we have the guests that are here identify themselves, please?
Kevin Jacobson, Finance Director.
Harry Buffington, Human Resources Director.
Randy Nielsen, City Attorney.
Okay, thank you very much. And then in the spirit of helping the city staff, Mr. Jacobson can only be here for the first few minutes of the meeting, and then he's got another obligation that he needs to get to. So I would like to have a consensus that we allow Mr. Jacobson's portion go first on the agenda so that we can let him get on to the rest of his.
Mr. Chair, did we adopt the agenda?
That's why I'm making that comment. So,
Okay,
yeah.
I also have a correction I would like to add if we're in the process of adopting.
Okay.
I would like to amend item 1 under the action items to say what the amended agenda said when we posted it, a discussion and determination of the separation of Director Lionel Foster from the Human Rights Commission.
Okay. Is there a second to that request?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, so do we have then a motion to adopt the agenda with the action item number 1 coming first, since that will entail the report from Mr. Jacobson? we have a motion to do
Okay,
that?
do you need a motion?
Yes.
So moved.
Yes, second. Seconded by Van Zomer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried unanimously. So, then, a motion to adopt the entire agenda as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Palmer.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Dodge. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, approval of the minutes, let's go ahead and take care of that. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the April 2013 meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Dodge. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Palmer. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from April, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously. Okay, then let's move on, as we've discussed, to the first action item. Which is the discussion of the separation of Lionel Foster, and which I think really ties with the non-action item that we had posted, which is the discussion of present, future human rights budget, because the budgeting and that is kind of both, I think, woven together and probably goes hand in hand, and we need to kind of have a concurrent discussion covering both of those items. So I see heads nodding, that we have consensus there. Okay, so Mr. Jacobson, could you come forward and give us your report, please?
I printed out pages 14 through 20 of the packet that was on the website, and page 14 starts with revenues with comparison to budget for 10 months, ending April 30th. This is in the packet. This is where the actual budgets are, or expenditures are, for Human Rights HUD and Human Rights EEOC. That is just some information for you guys to look at from the standpoint of where you are to where you need to be. The next page, and I use that information for the next page, is called Budget Amendments. And within the budget amendments, I have two amendments that are moving forward. One for HUD for $75,000 and one for EEOC for $5,000. We'll go to the following page. Should be expenditures with comparison to budget. It'll say Human Rights HUD grant, and that page will look similar to this. And there's some handwriting at the bottom. That is my handwriting. That particular budget shows the HUD grant, and the HUD grant as of April 30th is $41,974 in the negative. You ask why it's there. I'll tell you why it's there. As expenditures come through for different areas, we may not get billed for them until the following fiscal year. In this case, we had bills in one year that we paid for in another year. The money is available from the prior year to pay this. This is why it's being amended. If you look at the bottom of that on my handwritten information, it shows that you have $33,000 remaining after the amendment in this budget to be able to spend under the HUD grant area. The next page is EEOC, similar information. This one actually has a positive $7,300. When we add the additional $5 in speaking with Lionel on what he was possibly going to spend this fiscal year, we put the additional $5 in. That has $12,000 remaining this fiscal year. Now I want to go to the back couple pages. It's a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet. I have, since the inception of the HUD grant and the inception of EEOC, tracked revenues and expenditures and given this sheet to both Lionel and Amy to let them know where they are from the standpoint of whether they have enough money in the HUD or EEOC to be able to spend the money. If you flip to the second page, which has a total for HUD, there's some typing, and there's my initials on the bottom of this again. This shows currently, as of April of this year, there is $32,000 remaining of HUD money to be able to be spent in that particular area. So that's money available. That's money I've shown as being collected within the city coffers. That is not grants that Lionel and Amy currently have that are outstanding that they can draw. And it's my understanding there's $34,000 additional HUD money that can be drawn. So in essence, HUD, you have $32,000 currently on hand plus $34,000 to draw. The final sheet is EEOC. And if you look at that sheet as of April 30th, again, we got $5,900 remaining, and we have a $26,000 grant outstanding or out there that we can draw from as well. So EEOC, you've got right around $31,000. So in essence, that's the financial information that I'm presenting from the standpoint of the budget itself. The reason we have a negative is because expenditures from a prior fiscal year were carried into this fiscal year and paid. We have the money to pay it. That's what this information is proving. There's $60-some thousand in HUD. There are $31,000 in EEOC.
Okay. Lionel, I believe you had some input to tag on to what Mr. Jacobson.
We received our authorization from HUD this morning to draw down the $34,800 that they owe us. That will be probably approved because we get the notification from Kansas City. They have to contact DC. DC then says okay, and then we go back in and we draw it down. And so that money should be here in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks at the most. As far as EEOC is concerned, the cases that we currently have open are in that inventory for that dollar amount. I can't remember what Kevin said, but 20-some thousand. Yeah, that's there. So whenever we finish out those cases, we turn those in to EEOC, and then they reimburse us for the work that we've done on those cases. So total, you're looking at probably $90,000 of federal funds that are going to carry over until next year. Commission's not broke, okay? And that overreach on there, I think Kevin has intelligently and articulately explained that $101,000 that people were concerned about. There was no shortage. We have never overspent our budget in the 40 years that I've been here. Is that correct, Kevin, as long as you've been here?
That's correct.
Director Foster, could you please help explain to us the EEOC cases, what the number of those are, and the timing on how it might go to get those further toward completion?
I can.
Let the record note that Commissioner Sargent has joined the meeting.
What have we got open, Amy?
I'm sorry?
40? How many cases are open?
58.
58. We have 58. We're closing those up rather quickly. We should be able to have some final decision on that number probably by the end of June, maybe the first part of July, first week of July.
And I'm sorry, were those EEOC cases?
There are cases that we cross-file with the EEOC.
Okay, I'm just wanting for clarification.
So how many of those are the ones that I had my discussion with Beth Townsend about that she really doesn't want because they're so far along in the process?
Well, I guess when we get on that item, I'll try and explain to you what that agreement said. There's a lot of misconception about what that agreement is intended to do. But
Right.
I'll give you a brief.
But what I'm talking about is there were some cases that we discussed with her that she particularly didn't want to take because they were so advanced into their...
Right. If they are over
Lifeline.
a certain vintage, let me explain it this way. When you turn a case that we've already investigated and done all the work on over to ICRC, Iowa Civil Rights Commission, they then take that case and if they finish it off, then they turn it into EEOC to collect, okay? Every case that we've got thus far is only absent a final written decision on it. The rest of the work has been done, except for the new ones that are coming in. So if the case, I don't know the year numbers or months numbers she has on it, but if it's over a certain amount of months old, they won't give you anything. They'll pick the case in, but they won't give you anything because they can't collect from EEOC.
Right.
That's the essence of that. Now, If you start out brand new and you file a complaint with ICRC, they then cross-file with the EEOC. Now, they will take the case and they will completely investigate the case. All the commission will do is to do the intake. You take the case in, you write up the complaint, you send it down to Des Moines, and they take the case from there, and that's it. If you take a case in and you investigate the case, then you are going to be put on that chart as far as the completion is and how much money they'll pay you. That's what that agreement said. So I attended the Iowa League of Human Rights Agencies last Tuesday in Des Moines, and Beth was there, and she explained to the group who she's trying to encourage to file these agreements with, and some are not going to do it. Some have done it, and they're disappointed in what they're seeing now. But she made it quite clear that if the case is a certain vintage, you're not going to get paid for it. And the other problem we have is if they have to do something extra to the case. You send the case to them, and one of their people, they review your determination or review what you've done, and they have to do something extra, like call up Jack Smith over here. They're going to deduct from that $100 that they're going to pay you for your intake. So it's not a clean cut situation. You can either do the case completely yourself, or you can do the intake and give them the case to finish off.
So I just want to be clear, the last month I've been working pretty long and hard on trying to make sure we don't lose any HUD funding or EEOC monies for the commission as we kind of continue to investigate this path forward that we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 months. So,
could I respond to that, please?
Sure.
On the HUD, the contract is over. You won't get any more HUD money for fair housing cases. The employment cases, I talked with the EEOC folks. They said your contract is good until November. Fiscal year is November? September, whatever the fiscal year is over. It's good until then, and then they will consider whether or not they want to rewrite up another contract with you for their 2000, what are we, 13? Their 14-15 year.
Right.
And we're in 13-14.
Excuse me, does their budget cycle, is it the same as the federal government? And I believe it's October.
Yeah, October.
Yeah.
Right.
Probably would be right, yeah.
So as long as you continue to process the finish up the case you have, and as long as you continue to investigate the ones that come in, that contract will stay open through that period of time. And then they'll come back and negotiate another one with you and see where you are.
And then the other thing we need to consider as a commission is the legal responsibility we have to those cases, I think.
As I understand, and I talked with Tamara Hanson, she's from Council Bluffs, and I talked with the Waterloo Commission employee who was there. Let me go back over the Harris versus Waterloo Human Rights Commission case. Although it wasn't published, nonetheless it's guidance for anyone who wants to take a look at it. In that case, the Waterloo Human Rights Commission refused to take a complaint filed. A lady, Harris, tried to file with them against John Deere. There was some argument that their human rights director at the time had some connection with John Deere and wouldn't take cases in against John Deere. That was all street talk. She tried to file a complaint with them. They said, we're not going to do it. She eventually filed with Iowa Civil Rights Commission. She eventually filed with the EEOC. Then she turned around and filed a lawsuit in federal court against the Waterloo Human Rights Commission. The judge in that case, in the Harris case, and I've given, you may not have a copy of the new memory, but I've given a copy of that to all of you, said that the Waterloo Human Rights Commission violated the complainant's due process rights because she had a legal right to file a complaint with that local commission. And since they wouldn't take that complaint, then they violated her due process rights. That's the way I read it. I've talked to the staff member from Waterloo, and she said that's the way they got it too. and so they don't do that anymore. So I'm concerned that if someone comes here and already has a complaint, file with the Human Rights Commission, and you say, we're going to dump it on ICRC, they could very well get an attorney and we go through the same thing that Harris went through.
What are the ages of these 58 cases in the EEOC?
I'm sorry?
What are the ages of them? How long have they been in the process?
I don't know. I have to check that out.
Well, they each would vary.
Yeah, they'll vary.
Ballpark of an average?
There could be some that are 2 years old. We were within 18 months or a year before all of this hoopla came up, and that's what I'm going to call it, all of this disruption, because it threw us back in trying to get the cases finished off, as well as those cases that were coming in. We were out of our bottleneck, and we were heading to the finish line. Right now, as I mentioned, 90% of those cases that we've got are already been investigated, but we now have to write decisions and get those out to the complaining party.
And I think it's important everybody know, especially with the press here today, that it's not, the age of those cases isn't anything due to our lack of timeliness in getting them done on our part, because when a case gets beyond the fact-finding here and all that, then it gets involved in the legal process, and sometimes it's just a matter of attorneys delaying and getting it through the hearing system.
Yep.
Just being the new guy, I'm just going to answer a question.
No problem.
Because I want to learn.
No problem.
If the written findings aren't done, and it possibly however long it lags on, does that affect their ability to appeal it?
No.
No? Okay. I didn't know.
No, there's only one, there's two deadlines. One is 300 days to file. If you miss that, you can't file. The other one is on the right to sue, and that's a 60-day time limit. So if a person takes their case, and they all have that information. In other words, anyone who has a complaint filed with the Human Rights Commission right now could come, a complainant could come back in and say, you guys haven't finished my case off, I want a letter for a right to sue, I'm going to take it to the district court. So they're fully aware of that when they come in, because we explain it to them. And we also give them a packet of information that explains that and shows them how to file a letter for a right to sue. Okay, so those are the only two deadlines that are in the statute. Then you've got your, if you go to public hearing and it goes into court, that's another deadline. Yeah, it has to be met.
I just want to be clear on what you told us about the Waterloo case, Director. They refused to do intake on that case.
Right.
We have not refused to do intake on any cases, so that's sort of apples to oranges.
Not necessarily. Due process means the full vote. You take a case in and you decide that somewhere down the road that you're not going to finish it off. I think in that particular case, the judge is going to argue that you didn't give that person full due process. Now, I will also mention too that in order to give the benefit of the doubt to the complaining parties, we sent out letters to all of those individuals who currently have cases with us, and we said, we're going to give you three options. You can either send it down to Iowa Civil Rights Commission, you can send it to EEOC, or you can leave it locally. And I believe the last count that Amy had, probably about 90% of those individuals are saying, except for those who dropped out of the system, 90% have said we want to leave it here locally. And some may even get a letter for a right to sue. I'm not sure of that yet.
Thank you, Director Paul, or Director Foster. Okay, any other comments or questions?
I guess I have a comment. So I believe what I heard from you, Dean, was that your question had to do with the funding that we would not get if we did not go ahead and finish off those cases.
Correct.
So the ones that are too far along that you talked to Beth about, and they really didn't want to take them, if they're that far along, we would get a small amount, while if we finish them ourselves, we would get the full amount due to us, which would be money back into the commission funds. Is that what you were asking?
Right.
Thank you.
Do we know how many of the 58 are too far along, whatever that mark is, and how many of them are not?
None of them.
None of them are?
None of them.
You see, here's the distinction. The fact-finding has been done. All of in other words, the investigation has been completed. The only thing they're waiting for now is a written decision. So if you send them down to Iowa Civil Rights Commission now, and they have to write the decision, they have to go through it, you're not gonna get a dime out of it. You're just dumping off the cases onto the state.
That will effectively have done the work for no remuneration.
Exactly. Exactly.
We've already earned the money by doing the work.
Exactly.
The commission needs to have the funds put into our coffers.
Right.
Which I think speaks to the issue that Commissioner Palmer and Commissioner McNamara have brought, is how does this all tie into the timing of Lionel's termination time with the Human Rights Commission. And it's my opinion that we need to not be penny wise and pound foolish and terminate him before we get some of these cases wrapped up. And if that takes an additional 30 or 60 days, I think it might be wise financially for the commission to decide to let's finish the cases that we've already done the work on and get full payment for them rather than arbitrarily just sending those all down to the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. So I'd like to hear some thoughts.
I would like to, Mr. Chair, if I may, I would like to hear what Perry has to tell us about the cost of continuing the director piece.
Thanks. Yeah, because that's an important piece. So, Mr. Buffington, could you give us the numbers? I think we have them.
Yeah, well, what I wanted to bring to the commission's attention is when they make the decision, whenever that may be, that they're to eliminate any position within, paid position within the commission at this point, whether it be Lionel Foster's, Amy's, or whatever, that there is a vacation payout liability. And so any vacation that currently has already been earned and just not used yet is a liability that they are entitled to. They can have that paid out to them lump sum, or it can be after their final day of work, they can have it paid out over time. So if they've got 6 weeks of vacation, for instance, they could take 6 weeks drawn out over that 6 week period, continuing that salary. So that is a liability that's out there that goes against your budget. And so it's important that you take that in consideration as you're looking ahead at your budget. There's also an accrued vacation liability that's accruing every day to pay for the next year's fiscal year's vacation. And so I had prepared a few numbers that an accrued vacation and unused vacation combined, that if there was to be a separation in Mr. Foster's position as of May 1st, we're looking at roughly $12,480 in liability. If that separation occurred on July 1, then it'd be $13,750. And so it's numbers I just wanted to bring in front of you and make sure that you're aware of as you continue your deliberations.
I'm sorry to ask you for something that you didn't already do the homework on, but what would those numbers be if it were August 1st and September 1st? It looks like it's a small incremental.
It's prorated, and so he would have at that time additional vacation that's been accrued, as well as then depending upon whether he has used any vacation, that may change somewhat on his earned vacation. If he were taking vacation between now and then.
Because I noticed here from June 1st to July 1st, it's only a $600 incremental increase. I would imagine it would be $650 or something for the next additional,
yeah,
for the
prorated out.
Additional month or two.
Okay. Could you give me that July 1st number again, please?
$13,757. Otherwise, the only other cost beyond vacation that really would be of any substance would be medical insurance. We'll be continuing on until the point that he is no longer on payroll.
Does medical or benefits, is it affected one way or another if you do a lump sum versus a weekly?
Well, it's gonna be his option whether or not he chooses to have his vacation paid out lump sum or not. If he had it paid out lump sum, then his final date of employment would be the date that he is paid through, and that's when his insurance would end the last day of that month. So whatever that date is, whether it's being paid out lump sum or paid out over that 5 or 6 week period, at the end of that period is when the vacation ends, or excuse me, the medical insurance ends.
Any other questions for Mr. Buffington?
Now, I know this doesn't have anything to do with what it costs us, but now, do you get unemployment? Are you being let go, laid off, fired, or what? I never did find out what's going on.
Well, I'm not gonna retire and I'm not gonna quit. So obviously, if they eliminate the position, I'll draw unemployment.
Okay.
I'll say this on the record, there could have been other arrangements made other than what's happened here. So I'm gonna say on the record that I'm not gonna retire and I'm not gonna quit.
I'd ask, what kind of arrangements would you be open to? I think that's a question
Well,
that we should
I'm-
have all asked a long time ago.
That's right, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna commit. If my job's on the agenda today, I'll let you folks make your determination on what you wanna do.
I've wondered all along what becomes of you, as far as you being employed by the city, you know, or whatever, and then all of a sudden you no longer have a job. It's not something that you voluntarily gave up, you know. And I've wondered all along and never spoke up because I thought one of the commissioners would, what is your future?
Well, I'll find something else to do.
Yeah, but I mean, I've always wondered that.
I'm too young to retire.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think I'm speaking for every commissioner on here. None of us were looking to lose a full staff. We were presented with a budget change from the city council that really doesn't allow us any other option. I know I'm certainly going to miss your expertise at the end of whatever time period ends up being, but unfortunately, that's not the issue. This is just a hard economic reality that the commission has to deal with. And $15,000 from the city, even if you include all the outstanding grant funds, which I'm not sure it's entirely appropriate to put it all into one person's salary, is it going to be enough?
I'm aware of that. I'm way ahead of it. As I mentioned a moment ago, because Commissioner Gantz and I have talked about what I can do to continue to assist the commission. I think Councilmember Tornquist went on the air saying that you could bring me back as a consultant. I haven't heard none of that from anybody here. None of that. All I know is that I see this on the agenda today. You guys got together and, hey, he's got to go. So I'm not going to offer anything at this point.
Well, I believe that that's a smart course of action for us to consider that, you know, and I think that this is an opportunity for us to consider everything. You know, it's a good time to figure out what we're going to do, because Lionel has a tremendous amount of experience, and from the things I've heard traveling around the state, many of the other human rights commissions call him. That's the first thing they do. I've heard it repeatedly, so it might be in our best interest to consider some sort of, you know, agreement where we can work with him. You know, and I think that would give us a lot better of an opportunity to use his knowledge, because I believe going forward we're going to need to, with the lack of funding that we have, we're going to need to come up with some different ways of doing things. And one of the ways we're going to look at this is by having some sort of academy where we teach about human rights, not just to the people who complain, but to the other side of the coin. And I believe that's something that we really have to begin considering and moving in that direction, because we don't have the funding for anything else, but we can start shaping and moving in a direction where we do more outreach to our community. That's something that hasn't happened, especially to our education, you know, community. That's something that we haven't done. And I think that's the direction we need to move in. There is where Lionel can give us, you know, his expertise and his knowledge. That's a direction we ought to take up.
So do you want to put that in the form of a motion on the plan?
I believe that's within reason, yes. And I'd like to make a motion to consider adding Lionel as a consultant that we can draw on, you know, when we finalize this process.
So are we asking him to establish a per hour fee?
That's something we're gonna have to work out because we don't know where our
Well,
money
since
is
we were
going.
just talking budget money,
Yeah.
but obviously, you're gonna charge us $4,000 an hour. For you. And if you find someone who's gonna give that to you, give me their name.
Okay.
I wanna get them as a client.
I would really like to find out what some of the other commissioners, how they feel about that, you know, because we have to look for some sort of plan moving forward.
I think it's the only logical approach. We have a resource.
Before we discuss it, we need a second. I'm just trying to make sure we're legit.
Right.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor then made and seconded. And I guess I would ask the first question, if I might, Commissioner McNamara. Your motion is speaking toward that being a paid consultant? That there
Well,
would be
my motion is basically
remuneration
considering it and establishing a plan of action.
But what I heard in the motion was to utilize Director Foster as a consultant, but it didn't say
Paid
to be paid or unpaid.
Well, I believe it,
Needs to be paid.
yes, paid.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clarification.
So that's clarified, and I'll second it again.
Okay.
But not $4,000 an hour.
No, I didn't hear dollar.
I want in on that.
Me too.
Okay. So do we have any further discussion on that motion in that second?
I guess my biggest question is, how do we proceed? Will that be delegated to a committee? Will that be delegated? Because obviously, there's going to have to be some deliberation in terms of what you're willing to accept in payment and what we can afford.
Well, the other thing I think that we didn't include in the motion is when does the change take place? At what point? We didn't let that out at all.
I think I would just add one other thing, and I'm inferring some from your comments, and if I'm wrong, I apologize in advance. We have until June 30th, essentially, when the budget changes. We have one meeting that is scheduled since then, unless a special meeting is called. I think that it would be disrespectful also to you to wait until that time to say, what is the commission going to do? That's why we've got to get out in front of some of this and say, what are going to be our options? We have been delegated the task of, we have to operate with less money. I think with your service, it would not be prudent and not to show you some respect of waiting until June 30th to possibly get a motion on the table to say, hey, what about a consultant? And just saying, see ya, because this is what we've been forced to do. And that's the intent of saying is, we've got to talk about some of this stuff. We have been painted into a corner, put into a box, whatever you want to say, but we've got to move forward with some of this because there's no good that can come out of making rush decisions.
Yeah.
And we have basically 2 hours of meetings to discuss the future of everything with this commission.
So Commissioner Dodge, I think that's an excellent point, and maybe for clarification, could we then go ahead and vote on the motion that I see heads nodding around the table regarding, vote on that motion as it was seconded, and then I would suggest then that we appoint a committee to work out the details.
If I may.
Between now and the special meeting that we may, work session we may have.
Sorry, Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes.
I was just thinking that maybe what we need is an amended motion and add the phrase, at such time as Director Foster's separation becomes official, or wording to that effect.
Yeah, I think that's it.
You want to second that
Yeah,
amendment?
I second that.
Okay, we've had an amendment and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimously around the table, sounded like to me. So the amendment has carried. So that takes us back to the motion itself. is there any further discussion regarding that?
What motion again?
Yes.
The
Could we
motion-
repeat the motion, please, Mr. Chair?
The motion that, about,
We employ.
we employ Mr. Foster as a consultant and,
After the time.
After the time.
Yes.
He's been, his position has ended. We'll employ him as a consultant.
Okay, and we're not prepared to establish when that will be, we're just.
No, that's still a separate item, I think, on the agenda, right?
Yeah.
So, that's still on the table, Commissioner Palmer, I would say. Is that what you intended?
That's fine, I'm just asking that question because I think it could be combined into this motion, but if that's not the wish of the chair, that's fine.
I think let's leave it separate at this point so we don't get it muddled. Okay, ready to call the question? Okay, all in favor of the motion by Commissioner Sargent and seconded by Commissioner McNamara, I guess, right?
Yes, the amended motion, yes.
To go into an agreement to hire Director Foster on a consultant basis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, all ayes, no opposed. Okay, then that takes us to the other half of this, I guess, which Commissioner Palmer indicated is still the, on the table, which is the date of Director Foster's full-time employment as director.
I guess there are two different ways of looking at this. If he's going to be, if we're going to be negotiating with Lionel as a consultant, the significance of the size of the payout is a small portion of what we have remaining in our balances. So I'm not sure that that's really critical in terms of the payoff, and the vacation payout in particular. So I could basically go with, well, obviously it can't be May 1st, but say May 15th. And it might actually do you good to take some vacation, Lionel. But,
I'm curious about why we would want to show Lionel the door early. What's the advantage? And I'm truly asking. I guess if it were my employee, I'd hang on to him as long as I had the money to pay him. Since we've already agreed that his expertise is valuable, I'm wondering why we would want.
I don't have a problem. As I said, I don't really have an issue whether it's July 1st or May 1st. But if we are conserving some funds, that would be the only consideration. If the commission is of the mind that the final date is June 30th, we just need to realize that that's tapping more funds than we're currently tapping.
Sure. I would also have a concern that Director Foster would also have grounds to file a complaint for terminating his long-term position early, which could be.
But could I explain what I understand the issue is? You're only getting $16,000 from the city beginning July the 1st.
15, I believe.
I thought it was 16.
I thought it was 15.
Is it 15?
Yeah, it's 15.
Okay, it's been changed so many times.
15.
That if I go into July the 1st, as Perry has already articulated, that will continue on and that I will be entitled to $13,000 or $14,000, which will eat up your $16,000. And what I understand is that, well, we don't want to do that because that's all we have from the city government to operate off of. I can understand that. That's a good argument. But you also have the federal money that's there. So, you know, however you're going to work those numbers out is strictly up to the commission.
And I think we just validated that we value your service, Lionel, and we would like to have you be a consultant. The other piece of this is, as we make this transition, public education is going to become extremely important if we want to keep the same level of service that we have. So money is going to be required to do that. So I think we do have some, even though from a standpoint of do we have the cash to pay, we do. But we also know that the larger amounts of cash are going to be spent down. So any cash we can conserve, we need to conserve, in my opinion.
And who, in your statement there, who would you be looking to for the education component?
Well, that's yet to be determined. I think that's another discussion we need to have, but I think it's our responsibility to educate the people in town.
No, I agree, but I was just
how
asking
that would
whether you were
work.
thinking
Well, I really haven't thought that through.
I was wondering if you thought that was Lionel via this.
Well, certainly
consulting
he could be,
arrangement?
yes, I think he could be an asset in that regard because, you know, we're used to him taking the leadership role in all of these things.
Right.
And I'm sure that the education piece, we would want him to continue to take that leadership role. So the cash conservation piece is the important piece here.
As long as we're not being penny wise and phone.
Well, we can make
That's
that
what I'm
argument,
concerned about.
Colleen, and I'm not sure, to be honest with you, that we know the answer to that unless, you know,
Well,
but we do know that what our obligation will be on July 1st.
Sure.
And so we understand that piece of it. I mean,
I guess I have spent too many years in my dim and distant past working for an attorney, so I always look at possible liability issues.
Sure. That's a legitimate concern.
And let me tell you, there is one.
We have one in the room.
Indeed, we do.
Mr. Nielsen.
What's your question?
Are we handing Lionel a $10 million lawsuit if we do this?
I'm not gonna express an opinion on that.
And I'm being facetious.
He'll have to get his own legal advice as to whether or not there's a liability issue.
Well,
So for further discussion, do we have a motion on the floor for what the commissioners around the table are thinking as far as the termination date, so we can get a motion on the floor in a second, and then let's move on this topic.
I'm all for saving money wherever possible, just as long as it doesn't come back to bite us.
I would for one agree with that, but we still need a motion on termination date as it's on the agenda.
Well, for the sake of getting this on for discussion, I would propose that we give Director Foster 2 weeks' notice, which would make it the 15th of May, and make that his date for full-time employment, and by that time have the proposal in place to use him as a consultant. After trying to conserve cash on that basis. I don't know if that's a very good motion, but off the top of my head, that's the best I can do.
Okay. You've heard Commissioner Palmer's motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner McNamara. Any further discussion or comments?
One point of clarification, I don't like the word termination because this is really not something that we went looking for as a commission, and Lionel does report to the commission. This was something that was forced on us by budgetary constraints, so I would prefer to use the word separation. Obviously, we want you as part of this group if we're going to be approaching you on a consulting basis. So I just like hear the word separation.
The political correct word is separation, but the fact is, you being booted out the door, and I feel terrible about that. And I know that's not politically correct, but it is what it is, and we have to deal with it.
Well, I'm sorry that Kevin left, but I believe my salary goes to June 30th.
That's what I thought too, June
It does
30th.
goes to June 30th, so if you want to kick me out before then, go ahead and vote on it. But I'd like to have each commissioner vote, what do we call that?
A roll call.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. You know, I am a little concerned, and I'll tell you why. We have been moving so fast on this issue of separating Lionel from our commission. And I'm wondering, have we all covered all the bases that we need to cover? You know, whatever paperwork we need to take care of, whatever issues that he's working on, have we covered them?
And discuss the possible complete ramifications.
Because those are things that we don't want to go ahead and run out and do whatever we're going to do, and then later on decide we're going to ask him about it. That's puts us in a different position. As an employee, he's in one position. As a consultant, he's in a totally different position, and he has no loyalty whatsoever. So I want
and he can say no.
Yeah, and I want you guys to understand that that's what we're doing. We're changing something. So we need to make sure all our dots, all our I's are dotted, all our T's are crossed. We need to make sure of that before we decide.
Is your last day supposed to be like June 30th or 31st, right? That's what I assume, because in the, or June 30th, okay? Because in the fiscal year starts July 1st. That's what I assumed, that you were here until the end of June. That was my assumption.
Just to recap what Perry just presented to us, if we do that, then we will have an obligation to pay out around $14,000 to Lionel for accrued vacation. If he separates by the middle of May, that obligation would be paid out to him as part of this year's budget. And so I guess that is the cash conservation piece of this.
Here's my concern though, speaking as one of a couple of people in this room, Kathy Gaines being another, and I'm sure others as well, but who have, I've been on this commission since 1999, and I've been a fact finder on many an employment case. And I can tell you that just eliminating the funding for someone's position does not save us from a complaint. I know there have been, I've been to enough trainings that, of course, all the certain circumstances are always different, but there are certain criteria that remain. And if we do this in a clumsy fashion, we are opening the city to a very large lawsuit. And yes, we should save money wherever possible, and yes, we have limited funds to work with, but if we open ourselves up to a lawsuit, that's gonna go a lot faster then.
So carrying that thought one step further, does that same situation apply to July 1st, Colin? What you just said?
Since it has already, you know what? I'm not so sure he didn't have one anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another concern that I have. But given that I think we're already in a gray area there, I would hate for us to make it worse. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with the need to save every dime, but I think we better be very, very careful here. Very careful. Sorry to talk about you like you're not in the room.
Yeah.
I know.
The invisible man.
I felt terrible.
Okay, are we ready then to take a roll call vote on Commissioner Palmer's motion?
Can I say something before that? At this point, and did you say I could?
Yes.
June 30th, it's still considered separation. If we say we're going to have you leave prior to that date, I don't consider that separation. I consider that an early termination. When it comes to that wording, we are doing an early termination. We are not letting him separate. So I have a concern about you're saying you want separation, because that's not what it is.
Okay, I think we've heard the pros and the cons in the essence of time. we?
Frankly, I think, I don't know, for me, I'm trying to listen and capture, I just think we have a lot of unknowns, a lot of questions that aren't answered. And I think it would be quite difficult to move forward with a motion when there's that much outstanding. I mean, even and I'm not a Robert's Rule person, but, you know, I mean, is that wise, you know, when we have question after question after question and no response or answer or guidance or advice, and we don't have the expertise, if you will, in the room to get those questions answered. So I guess I just pose the validity of even a motion at this point.
But we're running out of time, that's just it. You're looking at, this is May, you have June. That's it. Time has, I mean.
Unless we would call for a special meeting after we had a chance to maybe get the experts in the room that can answer some of these questions. That'd be legal advice and city advice. And, I don't know.
I think we need to have legal advice before we even go forward. I really know that.
Okay, then I would withdraw my motion. If that's if the feeling of the majority of commissioners is such, I would withdraw my motion.
And we have withdraw the second. Withdrawal from the second? Okay. All right, so we are withdrawing that, and what do we say the status is? Are we tabling it?
We're definitely going to need to have a special meeting, so we can,
the special meeting.
Yeah, we can organize all of these items together.
Okay, I would like to, if we can, before we leave today, do we have everybody that can stay here another 10 minutes so we can get the Iowa Civil Rights Commission agreement discussed and finalized? Because I've been on the phone a lot with Beth Townsend and trying to get that worked out over the past several weeks, and I really think that's another one that we don't want to let drag on for too much longer, so we can let the community know and the mayor and the city council know that we've worked hard at getting a plan going forward, and that we have some kind of an agreement in place for what we're going to do beyond June 30th. So I think we're ready. We've had a lot of time to look at that. We've got the current proposed agreement in your packet that you had several days ago to be able to have time to review and look at as homework before today's meeting. So could we go to that?
I have a question about that right off the top, and then, in my opinion, it's been unfortunate that there's been some squabbling about it. But I'm very concerned about, and one of the contingency points is it, and I'm not an expert on 28E agreements, is it needed or is it not needed?
The 28E agreement?
Mm-hmm. Is it, I'm not familiar about it. All I know is I've heard two different people saying two different things.
Could I step out just a minute and I'll bring you back some information.
Pending that information that the director is getting us, are there any questions regarding any of the aspects and provisions of the agreement as it was presented to the commission?
Does that incorporate all the changes that were made between the city attorney and Beth and the agreements that were sent out in Meyer's email April 13th, I think it was something like that?
No, in talking with Beth Townsend, we went back to the original agreement that she presented to you here at a visit when we had her here in person. And when she went on record stating, that's in our minutes that were transcribed, that she did not want to make changes because she didn't want to have one agreement different from another throughout the state. So we've gone back to the original agreement that she proposed and that she wants. And I think she's an attorney. She has 14 attorneys on her staff. And this is the agreement that she had presented and still feels comfortable with. In the last three-way conversation, Lionel and I have sat in his office and had 2 or 3 different three-way phone conversations with her in bringing this to you in the form that it is today. And I've conferred with other human rights commissions around the state, and they had the same signature lines on their form, and Council Bluffs, for one, crossed out the city council signature line because they too got legal counsel and found that it was an agreement between the Human Rights Commission and the Iowa Civil Rights Commission, and that the city's signature and resolution did not come into play. That was the advice and counsel I got from the other commissions around the state of Iowa that we contacted.
Well, at the bottom of that agreement, I think if it's still on there, it talks about the, if it's appropriate at the local level, the mayor's signature was put on there. It's the very bottom of that last page.
Yes, it says, if required by your local protocol, separate signature lines have been provided for your commission chair.
And Council Bluff said it wasn't their local protocol. Well, let me take you over the 28E agreement. And I know I've been criticized for saying that, or saying something different than the city attorney, but I've gone through this before. The document you have in front of you is still alive and well. It's a 28E agreement with the county, Sarasota County. This was put together by a lawyer. When I talked to them about, hey, this has been whatever years on there, it's been in effect for what?
2001.
2001. They said that's how you frame a 28E agreement, because in the statute, you have all of these different areas. You have to identify the two bodies, the two parties that are in agreement. You then have to identify what the responsibilities of those parties are going to be, the method of financing, the commencement of the operation, the administration agreement, separation, administrative entity, no property acquired, indemnification, contract administration, contact people, and so on. And you'll notice that the Chair Lippert at the time signed that, and the County Board of Supervisors signed it. That's what I was told back then. Tom Meyer, the former city attorney, looked at that agreement and said, well, you know, you guys are a little short here on that. And I said, why is that? He's because you have to get the city council resolution to pass it. You then have to file it with the Secretary of State, and you then have to file with the county recorder's office. So the two parties must get legislative approval, or whoever's above you, to get these things to be a legitimate 28E agreement. This document that Beth gave you, she is the only one that's going to sign up. Her commission won't know that she's got it. All she tells them, that's the way it is. The governor doesn't sign off on it. The Iowa legislature doesn't sign off on it. So my position was, and I wasn't being nasty, and I wasn't being vindictive in the context of Beth coming in doing what she's doing. What I'm saying to you is I've been through that experience before, and that's what we did. The agreement you have in front of you right now is what I was told by a lawyer, actually two lawyers, that that's the way it has to be drafted in order for it to be legitimate. And then it has to be filed with the state, it has to be filed with the county. You're not filing this with the state or the county. So I don't know why it's necessary that it go before the
City Council.
The City Council. But I don't have any problem with it. If you want to get it in front of them, give it to the mayor, give it to the City Council, here's what we do. I don't have any problem with that. I'm just saying the way that you're approaching it. Because I don't want someone to come back later on and say, when the City Council, for example, said, well, look, you guys are under an obligation because you've got an agreement, you should be sending those cases to the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. First of all, that agreement says you're not bound to do that. So what's the purpose of having the mayor and the City Council pass off on it? You're not obligated to do anything. Beth sat right here and told you that when she was here.
And I asked her that again when Lionel and I spoke with her subsequently here in the last couple of weeks. I asked her again, you know, and she stated very clearly that you can send some, none, or all of your cases to the state. She doesn't really have an opinion or a comment as to what she wants. The provision is in the agreement for none, some, or all.
And if I may, just as a point of reminder, Ms. Townsend also said, as she was sitting here, stated something that some of us in the room already knew, which was that prior to the last, ever since she took office, I guess is the proper way to put it, you remember that we had been hearing about a backlog of 2 years, or a lag time of 2 years or 3 years. Cases hadn't been completed. Theirs was 10 years. And one of the first mandates given to her by Governor Branstad was to clear up that backlog. And she did it the only way she apparently saw was feasible, which was to dismiss every last one of them. Every one of them. So if that's what they're already dealing with, you know, how many we give them, how many we send them, we ought to have that in the back of our minds, that that's the situation that they're
It'll
in.
be a careful consideration that I think we as commissioners need to make on which
Very
cases
careful.
we send to them.
We were hearing about it when it was 3 years. Imagine if we had some that were 10 years old.
That's a real good comment, Commissioner Devine. Very good, because that is something we need to be really cognizant of going forward. But it's my opinion as your acting chair for this one meeting here, that we do need to get this agreement, I think, finalized and down to the director at the Iowa Civil Rights Commission.
I don't have a problem with that, but we do have the city attorney here. Do you have an opinion, Randy, on the 2080 and whether city council we should consent to it, city council should vote on it, and the mayor should sign it? Because if whatever's legal, I just want to make sure it's done right.
2080 agreements come in many forms. There's literally thousands of them on file with the Secretary of State, and I print some off, and they come in many forms. They don't always comply with the statute. But the statute, 2080 statute, states specifically that the purpose of that chapter is to permit state and local governments in Iowa to make efficient use of their powers by enabling them to provide joint services and facilities with other agencies and to cooperate in other ways of mutual advantage. Now, I could go down through all of the specifications for a 2080 agreement. This agreement meets most of them, probably not all of them. I believe, however, that this agreement was close enough to be categorized as a 2080 agreement. And whether or not it is or isn't, it's still an agreement being made on behalf of the city of Mason City. And it is my position, it always will be my position, that any agreement made on behalf of the city of Mason City is the business of the city council. Iowa law states that very clearly. Unless the city council has specifically delegated the authority to make such an agreement, which it probably has in some cases. I'm not aware that the city council has specifically delegated to the Human Rights Commission the ability to make agreements on behalf of the city. Maybe it has, but I'm not aware of it. And so that is my position. This commission can can make whatever arrangements it feels is appropriate. But my advice to the city is that the city should not give up the right to, as far as the city council goes, to review and to approve all agreements that obligate the city of Mason City to any obligations. I don't know whether this agreement has any obligations to the city. It's not much, I'll admit that. However, like I said, it's my position, and as far as I know, will always be my position, that agreements with the city's name on it are the business of the city council. Whether or not it's a 2080 agreement, it's still the business of the city council.
You would agree that this agreement, if we sign it as is, doesn't incur any expense to the city budget, correct?
No, I don't agree with that. I'm not sure I've looked at it from that point of view. It does appear to be mostly a benefit coming from the Iowa Civil Rights Commission to the Mason City Human Rights Commission.
Correct.
But I don't know what obligations it has. I'm sorry to say. I say they're not very large. I agree with that.
Commissioner,
I would be willing to make a motion that we accept and give consent to the cooperative agreement between Mason City Human Rights Commission and Iowa Civil Rights Commission, and send it on for the approval of the Mason City Council and signed by the mayor, so we know that we're in compliance with the 2080 agreement, because it's an additional step, but it seems like it gives the commission better coverage than just signing it on our own.
Okay.
I would second that.
Second by Commissioner Huesman. Any further discussion, comments? Further counsel from our director?
No, I don't have a problem with you signing it. Again, it's unenforceable. Whether the city has an obligation or not, I don't see where they do, because you can either file complaints with the state or you don't have to file complaints with the state. You know, and all it does is says that, okay, if you do this, we'll do that. You file with us and we'll give you some money for it. That's all it says. And you don't have to file with the state. So to me, we did work sharing agreements for years until Beth got here, and we just signed them. The directors of the commission signed them. Didn't obligate either the city of Mason City to anything. It just said the two agencies were going to share as it does in the 216.19, and that's where this. If you read all of those lines in there, it talks about 216.19. In the Iowa Civil Rights Statute, where you folks, or what you folks enforce, it says the same thing. That you have the authority to draft or enter into agreements with other agencies, and the state agency in particular. And it's always been my argument under 216.19 that when Iowa Civil Rights Commission did not enter into those agreements with a local commission, they were violating the statute.
Well, as one of your commissioners, I'm a bit conflicted because having done the research with Council Bluffs and so forth, I came today prepared to vote for this as Beth Townsend has presented it, but now our motion calls for it to have a conditional approval by this commission and then sent on to the city for final adoption, right?
Let me mention too, though, that the Human Rights Director at Council Bluffs is also the city assistant attorney. And I've asked her, she says, I don't know. She says, we're not, she scratched the mayor's name off of her name. And I think in her case, I think the city attorney may have, or somebody else in authority may have signed, I don't remember. But she didn't pass by the same time. You know, again, I don't have any dog in that fight. You sign it, you don't sign it. You have the city council do it, or you don't have the city council do it. To me, it's unenforceable.
I should know this, but is the next city council meeting next Tuesday or the following?
Yes.
Next Tuesday. So if we approved it today, send it to the city council, they could approve it on Tuesday, and we could say, could you please shoot this right out the door?
I will say this, I know that if it's approved today, they're planning to put it on the agenda on Tuesday. That's all I know about it.
We just need a vote.
Ready for the question then? Okay, the motion, who made the motion? Need your refreshment. Motion was made by Commissioner McNamara to sign and adopt the agreement by the Mason City Human Rights Commission, and that once we vote to adopt it, that it be sent to the City Council for their approval and adoption at the city level. And who seconded? Commissioner Huesman seconded. Okay, let's do a roll call vote then, starting with Commissioner Palmer.
Commissioner Palmer, aye.
Commissioner Sargent, aye.
Commissioner Van Zomeren, aye.
Brian McNamara, aye.
Commissioner Gant, nay.
Commissioner Dodge, aye.
Commissioner Houston, aye.
Commissioner Devine, aye.
Okay, motion carried, and the agreement will be then sent to the city for their consideration at the council meeting this coming Tuesday evening. Okay, with that, then I think we should probably go down on the agenda to the establishment of a special work session meeting. And Commissioner Sargent, I assume, given our discussion the other day, that you'll be able to share that meeting starting with the special session. Commissioner Huesman, before you leave, can you give us quick available dates you have in the next 2 weeks?
2 weeks. I think we missed a number 4.
Well, we've missed several in there.
So you want to take that up in a special session?
Several of these could go into a special session.
Yeah, I think 4, 5, and 6 is what I was thinking we would.
under number
I
5
tell you
action
what, I
items.
really do have to go, but, and honestly, it's pretty jam-packed, so come up with dates.
Evening
and,
meeting better for everyone,
Oh,
or
evening for me.
evening?
Better.
That was one thing I wanted to.
Yeah, it would be,
So-
during the day, it would be probably shot for the month of May.
Okay. So
Sorry.
evening better for Commissioner Houston.
Evening's better for me too, the days are out.
Okay. So,
For clarification, 4, 5, and 6 under number 5 action items.
yes.
Thank you.
I'm hoping we can, with just one having left, we can still maybe take care of number 3 today, since we shouldn't have a lot of discussion on that. So can everybody take a look at their calendar, and let's try to establish the special meeting work session date.
For me,
for you,
Tuesday evenings are open right now.
Those tend to be pretty good for me too.
I could meet on a Tuesday.
Yes, you are.
I'll be right back. Okay.
Don't vote on anything else.
Tuesdays work for everybody then? Then we are looking at the 7th, 14th, and 21st, and 28th are the Tuesdays. We probably don't want to waste a lot of time. Well, wait a minute. Tuesday the 7th is the city council meeting.
Right.
So are we looking at Tuesday 14th
I think we probably are going to need to move
to do that?
before that, other than that.
Okay. Well then. How's Wednesday for everyone? Say Wednesday the 8th.
Well, does the city council meeting conflict with many commissioners here?
Are they?
My question.
Hopefully
Does-
commissioners are going to the
Yeah.
council meetings.
Before the
We've
council
talked about
meeting.
that before. It's a good
Which we just had
opportunity
this
to
week.
show our strength.
The 8th is better.
Well, but I think if we miss one meeting, Kathy, it's probably not the end of the world. We have our own business to conduct here.
Well, what if we do it earlier, like from 5 to 7 or 5:30 to 7, schedule our meeting and the city council meeting in 3 times?
5:30 works for me.
That's a good point.
That's not gonna work for me.
Oh, that doesn't work for me. Darn.
I can,
What's your earliest time, Cam?
I can clear up Monday, because most of the things that I'm working on,
Yeah.
you know, Mondays are always the day I can move things around.
Monday's the best for me. Any of those Tuesday dates work.
Okay, so we're talking the 6th here, or
Yeah.
is that what we're talking?
Yeah.
Could we do it
There's a
early
lot
on Monday
at
evening,
6.
like, say like 5:30 or 5 to 7? Is that
Yes.
5:30?
Mhm.
We could meet 5:30? Could we meet here?
Does that work for you?
Yes, it's not.
Amy, could we meet here?
Check.
Could you check?
Okay, so we have a consensus then for May 6th
At 5:30.
at 5:30, and Amy will get back with us as to whether the room's available. And that's at 5:30, right? We said start time?
Mhm.
That should work for Commissioner Huesman, I would think, at the end of her day, hopefully. Okay, so let's then, I see a consensus that we go ahead and take care of item 3 before we adjourn, and we'll save action items 4, 5, and 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, and 6 for the special meeting Monday. Okay, so that takes us to the item 3 on the action items. The acting chair recommending the approval of Dan Raymaker as a friend of the commission. I guess I would say I was not familiar at all with Mr. Raymaker, but I guess he served this commission. He came to the office and filled out a form of the desire to align. I think with all the publicity we've had, we have sparked some interest among some folks in the community that have a heart for human rights and still want to see, I think they're agreeing, I'm hearing people out in the community that are agreeing with wanting to retain a focus on human rights issues, and so that was what I understood Mr. Raymaker's position was. And Lionel, as director, maybe you can speak to it since you took the call from him. You put a thing in the, we have an application for him in our packet explaining, but if you want to just give a brief summary of what years he was aligned with.
I can't remember if Dan spent 2 terms on here or not, but was it 2 terms? Okay, and he was quite active with the commission. He participate in fact-finding and whatever else the commission was working on. And he's also a good spokesperson for the commission when he was out and about in the community. And so I think him wanting to come back and help, I think is really going to be beneficial to the organization. He does have the experience.
He's a retired educator, is that correct?
No, I think he's still
He's still active.
teaching.
He's still active with
No, he
teaching?
worked for DCI. I was gonna say, he's retired law enforcement, he's
Yeah.
teaching now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he used to work for DCI. Now, in fact, when he was on the commission, he was still working for DCI.
I move to approve him as a friend of the commission.
I second it.
Oh, wait, 4 seconds there.
Wrestling for it.
Second.
I guess we got a majority.
Cam hasn't done much in the last month or two, so.
Give it to him.
So we're going to give him credit for seconding Commissioner Dodge's motion to accept Mr. Raymaker as a friend of the commission. So we have a motion and second. Any discussion further? Any questions? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimously approved. Okay, I would ask then for a motion to adjourn.
Well, before we do, were we establishing a committee for action item 1?
Yeah, we need to do that. Do you want me as chair to appoint 2 or 3? Do we have a feeling on that? I think it would be good if we had Commissioner Huesman as one of the people,
Yeah.
since she's involved with human resources. Who else would be willing to? I'll ask Commissioner Huesman, maybe we should have 3. Fulfill that?
Yeah, 3.
3 you can?
Yes, I'll do it.
We need a third.
Well, I gotta be careful now, because, you know, the responsibilities that I have now are far greater than I used to have before, so time's a bit limited for me at times. You know, I can do some scheduling arrangements. Does anybody else wanna?
Next few months are crazy for me, or I would.
I'll be happy to participate.
Okay, Commissioner Dodge, Commissioner
I do have a
Sergeant.
a
and-
question in the idea that Commissioner Huesman could not help with her direct knowledge of human resources. Can we lean on Perry to answer our questions, Mr. Buffington?
Well,
I think that's a set of skills that, again, great wealth of knowledge, would make sense that we had somebody.
Well, I think you'd be an
Have that
ad hoc person, you would be a go-to person.
Correct. I
As
guess I'm getting permission
as a
that
resource.
we have the ability to tap you if we need to.
Because you're going to have to do that anyway as a committee if you get into technical financial.
Agree totally. Those are not a set of skills that I have.
So from the commission, though, we'll go with Huesman and Sergeant.
Karen also was an HR person, so she might.
I was just
be
gonna say,
interested.
isn't Karen HR?
Yes, she has a
Okay.
background in that.
So if Huesman can't, then we'll go to Karen Reese. Does that sound logical? Okay. So I'll get in touch with Commissioner Huesman, and we'll count on the other 2 that are still present to serve on that 3-member team to work on that.
And meeting times will be initiated. How? By who?
email?
Okay.
I think the 3 of you will.
You're gonna head that out?
No, I would.
Amy will,
Yes, I
Amy
would do
will handle
that.
Oh, so Amy will.
She'll handle the organizing and the emailing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So.
Moved by Commissioner Palmer, a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.